You all right? My name's Paul. I've got autism and I make random videos based on my version of autism and the way my head works. And I stick them on the internet just in case anyone wants to watch them. There we go. Right. I don't know if I'm going to talk about something that makes me even stranger than I already am, or if it's going to make me stand out like a sore thumb, draw attention to me, whatever. But I want to talk about something a bit more personal to me, and whether it's crazy as a thought process to some, then I apologize. But it also won't apply to everyone either, so I will apologize for that. But I want to talk about Dexter Morgan. Yeah. So some people will know who that is, some people won't. But Dexter Morgan, for those who don't, is the character, the lead character in the show Dexter, played by Michael C. Hall. And, Dexter was out a good few years ago now, and then it came back 2021 for another season, which, of course, I'm watching. Um, and, I'm not going to say it was a phenomenal show, because some of the seasons were just pants, to be honest. But I always watched it regardless. So even though the storylines might have been bad, I was always drawn to watch it. And the reason I was always drawn to watch it is because I connected with Dexter Morgan, the character. And I know he's a serial killer in the show. I've not done any of that messing about in real life. Not for me, thanks. Far too messy. And the idea of prison, too many people. Um, but and what I don't want to do, I'm trying to keep it light, but it's really difficult to start because I feel stupid for connecting with a serial killer. For every TV show that's ever been on, every film, any TV program where it's got someone with autism in it as an autistic character, I don't connect to them at all. But bring me Dexter Morgan, the serial killer, and I'm like, me and you, like kindred spirits, mate. But I don't want to get into the conversation of whether he's a psychopath, whether he's a sociopath, and I know he's more psychopath than sociopath because of his, cold-hearted behavior and his false uh relationships and his failure to be able to, get genuine connection with people. But welcome to my world. I suffer with a lot of psychopathic tendencies as well. And that's obviously a misconception. People think because you are a sociopath or a psychopath, you are going to be violent, and not the case. And I'm not saying I am. I'd have to be diagnosed officially to even give it an ounce of credence. But a lot of psychopaths obviously have a job and a normal life that masks their criminal activity, which is what Dexter Morgan does, because he's a blood spatter analyst for the police, or at least he was in the original Dexter shows. But I remember the first time I watched it. That's how crazy it is. I've got the worst memory in the world. I need order to everything I do, because if I didn't have it, I'd never remember anything. I'd never remember where I'd put my car keys, where I left my coat, all sorts. That's why everything has its pride of place, because otherwise my life would be in chaos. But I remember when I first watched Dexter, I was working in Edinburgh, and I'd had a couple of beers, and there was this new show about, serial killers. But it was more light-hearted, and it wasn't a serious show. It's still had its humor and things. And I thought I'll give it a shot. And I remember being a little bit drunk, and I watched it, and I left myself a note. And I have never done this for a TV show. I left myself a note to say, you have to watch Dexter. You have to watch the first episode of Dexter again, because he talks how you think. And obviously, I got up the next day, and I wasn't, off my socks. I'd just had a few beers. I'd finished work. It was late. Used to have a pint while, I was doing all the cashing up and what have you. Then, I've had a couple more pints playing a couple of games of pool with a couple of guys who worked there, and then went back, so fresh air and all that, long shift. And, I'd left myself a note to tell me to watch it because he spoke how I think. And I remember thinking to myself, what on earth does that mean? And I watched it again and I was thinking, this guy talks how I think. And back then I didn't know I had autism. I just knew I was different. And every now and again I'd say something to see a room full of dropped jaws and think, oh, I shouldn't say that. Cross that off the socialization list. All right. And I had to try and put myself in a box. Um, you know, I just, it was tricky, put it that way. And I think what's hard and the reason I'm struggling to find how to talk about why I relate to someone who's perceived as a serial killer is because if I tell people that 95% of me connects with the show, connects with the character of Dexter Morgan, people just see him as the serial killer. And then they're quick to be like, "Oh, you're not like that. You don't go killing people." But what they don't see is what the character is, and the fact that he's methodical, he is logical, and he lives a double life, and he has a fake, boring life. This persona, this pretense to fit in with the world that he doesn't belong in. I know that feeling. Goodness, do I know that feeling? I have to wear a mask every single day because if people see the real me, it draws attention. And there's a guy on television who is living this pretend life, so nobody pays attention to him. It was something as simple as that. I was thinking, I'm going to watch the rest of this. And this is why when it got to later seasons and they started getting rubbish, I stuck in because the storylines weren't the thing keeping me there. What was keeping me there is I had a character in a show who I could relate to, and every now and again they would do something, and I'd be like, "Yep, I totally get that." Because sometimes you will do something that's outside of your own character. Because sometimes you like when he was with Lila in one of the seasons. If again, you're gonna have to know Dexter to know what I'm talking about. He was not who he usually is, but he was still being true to his mask. He was just letting it breathe a little bit, but he was finding it a bit tricky to see what Lila was really doing because he put so much focus on himself and trying to spin all the plates of keeping everyone around him fooled. Because when you are like me, I'm trying to keep everyone fooled all the time, but it isn't for a bad reason. It's so I can stay hidden. So when somebody's also playing you at the same time, it is quite easy to have the wool pulled over your eyes. And that's kind of what happened to Dexter when we're talking about Lila, to be honest, but he's Dexter when he's thinking. He's got a monotone voice. He doesn't really fluctuate when he's got his inner monologue going. It's quite one level, but then when he's talking to people, he's more animated. The eyebrows are going up, and he's nodding along with what people are talking about, and he'll humor people, even people he finds revolting or they're absolutely nothing like him, like Masuka. That guy was gross, but he humored him because if he ever told him how disgusting and revolting he is to be around and listen to, then Masuka would go, "Oh, we've got tension." And that's not something I would want. So I will humor people even if I've got zero time for them. In fact, I try and bring people who I can't stand even closer because I need to keep a better eye on them. So he does keep that double life going because it's in his best interest. And he just so happens to work within his special interest, which is blood. spatter analysis, and I'm not really interested. Blood doesn't phase me; it just stinks of iron to me. I've never liked the smell of blood, or the fact that it feels sticky once it dries on you. But I have special interests too, that people wouldn't understand if I really went into depth on it. And I'm pretty sure the same way Dexter Morgan, if he was to, like, there's times in the show where he's done really good string work to try and figure out the blows, and people are looking at him as if to say, "You put this much effort in. It's a bit over the top, isn't it?" And I could sit here and talk about things like Football Manager and why I've played it since the early 90s, and how, even though it's ultimately the same game it's always been, I will still look forward to the new release, even though nothing really changes anymore, apart from the teams are a bit more accurate. And other people just don't get a special interest. People with autism, quite a lot of them have a special interest, which might not be the same as what most people will find interesting, but Dexter's got his blood spatter. I've got my Football Manager. It just is how it is. But if you watch the character of Dexter, he's socially awkward. His demeanor doesn't fit the surroundings that he's in, and he rocks on his heels, and his hands are in his pockets, and he's always in a rush to get to the lift, and every time he turns round, he's rocking a little bit, and he always sighs when he gets in the lift, like, like he's just had to, that can unload that pretense that he's just done on the floor he works on, just from leaving his office to get to the lift. Speaking to someone will take it out of him. And, when the lift doors are closing, it's like, oh, right, I know from now till the lift comes to the bottom floor, or whichever floor he's getting off, it's my time. I'm all right. I can breathe out. Jobs are good. Um, and I know that feeling, but instead of getting in a lift, it's closing a door, a car door. If I'm like, all right, thanks very much. Cheers. I'll see you soon. All right, bye. Get in the car. And you're just so glad to leave the fake behind, and you can just sort of feel a bit more you again. So I get that. I understand that feeling. So I don't even know if that part's sort of written in for the character, where he's got to sigh when he gets in a lift, feel like he's been hard done by that communication. But it's what I take from it, and that's, like I say, that's why in seasons that weren't very good, I carried on watching, because it was the little things of the character. And maybe the character's an extension of the actor, and maybe he is a bit socially awkward as well. I really don't know. I just know it. I just know I relate, you know. And one of the things which I definitely got on board with was the fact that he was in a relationship, with Rita. It was his safe space, his safe place in society. He's, because when you get to certain ages and you're not in a relationship, it draws the attention of people. It draws the attention of family first. I've mentioned it before, but when I used to go to my uncle's because I hadn't passed my driving test and I'd never done driving, it was, hmm, have you passed your test yet? It's like, no, and it was always like the first thing on the agenda, and then I did it just to shut him up. And then, the next thing out of his mouth was sort of girlfriends and kids, and it's like, oh, and I think the joy of Dexter is he met someone who was emotionally shut off at first, and I can absolutely see the appeal in that, where they don't want to jump your bones and get lustful, because I don't have that in my arsenal. I don't get it. So when he was, when that sort of was born, and it's like, this is Rita, bad past, and that sort of suits him, where they just have pizza night and watch a film. Hell yeah, sign me up for pizza night and a film. Not the rest of the stuff that goes with it. Um, but the difference between me and Dexter is Rita had two young kids, Cody and Asta, and not for me. I couldn't pretend that far, because that would wear my patience thin, unfortunately, because I'm not a kid. I can't speak kid. Kids don't understand personal space, and No, no, no. So when he started, when he was dating Rita, and the reasons why I was obsessed from that point, because I was like, that's what I do. I will do short term relationships to maintain that. I wasn't doing short term on purpose. I wasn't like breaking hearts. I'm not some Casanova or anything, but I was working away and everyone else was working away and the job was temporary. It was from March till October. And if somebody was from, Hastings and I was working in Scotland, they had a hell of a drive home. And if I was going back to Manchester, that's still a drive. Neither of us drive, and it was never going to last. I knew that, they knew that, but I got to hide. I got to blend in by having a relationship, as because everybody else had one. So it was a good way to pretend. So I was jaw dropped when I watched something like that on television, thinking, I do that. And that was it. I was absolutely hooked. Because even his dark passenger that he talks about in one of the seasons, that ends up sticking around as a reference for him. I get the dark passenger. I get that there's something inside you that drives you, that is ultimately who you really are. And that's me and my autism, and that's me and the way I'm designed. And obviously, I really hope I'm not painting myself out to be a psychopath. This would be a really weird way to come out. But Dexter's dark passenger is the thing that's within him that is his urge to kill. Mine isn't. I don't really have that urge, to be honest. I want to punch people 1,000 times a day, but we do live in a bit of a stupid world, so it's easy to have that that desire. But his dark passenger, like I say, is to kill. And then his fakeness, is who he is for the rest of the time, is something he has to work on. And I understood that because when I was working away, on temporary jobs from from sort of March till October time, I got to be somebody different every year. And I worked away for near on 10 years. So I could go and work on one park in Scarborough and I would be a certain person. And then over the winter period, I'd go back to Manchester and I'd think about who I was and did I like any of that? And remember all the areas that this person was born from and created through. And did I want to be that person again the year after? And some pieces I'd keep, some pieces I'd throw away. And what I found is it was a great chiseling tool for me because when I was a lot younger and I first started doing certain things, my attempt to fit in would be extravagant. I would tell the most extravagant lies, because you wanted to impress everyone. But what you soon realize is you can't be that fanciful every single time because nobody's like that. And, in the end, I managed to get it down to a pretty fine art, with this being a different person every time. And, I was, when I was working in Scotland, for example, I was working in a place called Port Seaton, and there was an issue with the locals, and they wanted to come into the park to drink alcohol, use the fruit machines, watch the entertainment. And we were saying that's absolutely fine, but you've got to pay for an entertainment pass. And they really got angry at that because they were like, "Well, we're from the area," and it ultimately ended up where people who this basically said that anyone from the park cannot go and use anything in the little port. Like there was a shop, a pub, all these certain things, and they were aiming it more towards the English because the Scottish, the majority of them, for some bonkers reason, despise the English. And I lived and worked there for over 2 years, so I would stick my mask on, go into the town with a lad called Alan, who was Scottish through and through, and we'd go and have a few beers. But while I was in that pub, I was Scottish too. I had a Scottish accent, a good one. And I had to manage what I drank because the more I drank, the more the accent slipped. And if I got drunk, you'd be sat there talking to Liam Gallagher because the Mancunian comes out more, the more I've drank. So, that's the mask, and you have to mask to keep the dark passenger at bay. But my dark passenger is the real me, the autistic person, the one who doesn't want the interaction, the socialization, the interest in things that don't interest him. So I really understood that, and Dexter's very logical. He's got more logic than he does emotion, and I definitely think I'm the same. I'm a very emotional person because I don't see why things have to go wrong, and I get very frustrated over it, and I only want the best, but I'm logical first, because if we create the logic, there's less chance of things going wrong, so I don't have to get emotional. And even Dexter's kills have logic. He's got Harry's code. And again, if you've never watched it, you're gonna have to, because everything I say doesn't make sense. But his kills have logic because the person deserves to die in his head, in his logic, and they escape the justice system. But there's unequivocal evidence that he manages to find to prove their guilt. So he does them in. So I get that, but I more so get it when you don't get to keep your logic and emotion kicks in, because when it's outside of the logic, you start to lose control and you feel the control slipping away, and you work so hard every single day to keep your control and maintain the status quo around you to make sure everybody else doesn't notice you and doesn't notice a change and doesn't notice that can pick up on things. And he really starts to lose it, and he's out of breath and he needs to escape people and just hide and, lock himself in a toilet or a room and just gather his thoughts, like he does it when he goes in his blood lab. He'll drop his blinds and, he'll feel it. And that feeling, I get that as well, of losing the control, because it isn't like you just want something quickly and you put 5 seconds of thought into it. You put everything into it, all seconds of all days, and if it starts to get away from you, it starts coming unraveled. And because everything is interlinked and interwebbed, and you just start getting fearful that everything's going to collapse. And the crazy thing is, obviously, I'm talking about a serial killer who's hiding from people. I'm just hiding because I don't want the attention, but everything's still linked and wrapped up. And so I understood that. He walks into the police station like in the first season, and he's got a big box of donuts, and he's smiling at people, and people are taking the donuts. Thanks, Dex. Taking a donut off him. They're just seeing a guy with free donuts, whereas he's watching everyone and he can predict who's going to take what. And my life is all about prediction, and that's how I think I get away a lot of the time with the manipulation that I feel I have to do, because I'm not manipulating them to use them. I'm manipulating them to stay hidden so they don't ever have to feel bad, because I'm not trying to gain anything from it apart from average. And he gets to do that. And I understand it, because I try and boast people up when I first see them. I want people who, you can sense their insecurities, so I want to make them feel good about themselves, and laughing at jokes that aren't funny just to make people feel a bit more at ease around you. And I get it all. I get it all, because even though I can play people, just like Dexter, I am very confused by them. And that's why I have to play them, because they're not speaking my language and I'm certainly not speaking theirs. And that's why my mask is on. And so there's a lot of things that link together, in my opinion. He's got his relationship, he's got his bowling, because he joins a bowling team. He's not really bothered about bowling, not really bothered about a relationship at the beginning. Um, and it's all just to maintain being Mr. Average. And that was the bit that resonated the most, was just trying to be Mr. Average. You don't want attention, you just want to be a number. You don't want to be the boss, because being the boss can draw attention. You don't want to be the leader of a pack, because then people depend upon you, and you're not always going to want to be the person depended upon. Uh, Dexter. He had Harry's code. I've got Paul's code. His was, don't get caught and all these other things about how to get away with being a serial killer. Whereas mine are things like, you don't mess with me food, you don't mess with me sleep, I stay away from events, because they are the biggest triggers for me to lose it. And I suppose, I mean, what time am I on now? Ugh, how do I do this? I just waffle some nonsense, and I probably made no point whatsoever, but I just want to say that I relate to Dexter Morgan. But I think the most interesting part to me out of it all, because it's great to see someone who reminds you of you, and it's kind of like someone looks at you, and goes, I see you. I see you. I know what you're doing. And you're like, whoa, I always thought it was a secret. Um, all the blending in, all the Mr. Average, all the fake, all the doing things just to make sure you can not be seen or heard. And if you're not seen or heard, no one cares, which is exactly how I need to be when it's in real life every day. The part that got me the most was Sergeant James Dokes. And he was great, but he could see Dexter. He knew something wasn't right. And Dexter didn't know how he could see it, but he knew Dokes could see him, you know. And I'd try and do an impression of Dokes, but he swears all the time, and I don't want to swear on here. But I've had that. There is always someone who just doesn't take to you. There is someone in my workplace who just doesn't take to me no matter what I do. There was someone in my last work. Yep, there was someone in my last work because they reported me from one of my training sessions saying I was bad mouthing a boss. They were basically in the room to find what I was doing wrong to try and report me because there was just something about me they didn't like. Um, the place before that, it was my actual boss. And I'll be able to tell you this person is at my current place if I didn't work here anymore, but I still do. I remember when I used to train a lot and I would try and, juggle everyone in the room to try and get perfect feedback. And then every now and again, you would find one slip because I used to read my own feedback. I was collecting it. And then you'd pull one out. We only had 4 options. It was sort of like excellent, good, average, poor. And they ticked poor for everything and wrote this massive thing down the back of how they could see through me. I'll never forget it. It was a building in Manchester, on Princess Parkway, and she was quite well dressed, quite proper. But that was, I still remember there was a guy called Peter on the training, and I had him laughing that much that his face went like a tomato and he was crying. And I was feeding off that, and his laugh was making everybody else laugh. But this one woman just couldn't, she could just see that I wasn't being genuine. It's not like I was being a genuine person and then trying to make them laugh while I was training. It's like she could see that my baseline where I was starting from wasn't genuine. And then everything else was fake. And when I find people like that, I'd love to ask them, how do you know? How can you see me? But you can't, it's like one of those forbidden doors you can't walk through. I can't ask them how they can see me. And I guess that's a bit like Dexter. I've made no sense, have I? But that's what Dokes was like for Dexter. He could see through him, but, Dexter did say, what's your problem with me? But, he could have actually asked the genuine question, I know you can see what I am, and he never did because it's a forbidden door and you can't kick it in. So there you go. I relate to Dexter Morgan. If you've seen Dexter, please let me know I'm not by myself. I feel so stupid now if this video ever sees the light of day. I don't know if it will, but there we go. So anyway, thanks for watching, and hopefully you'll come back. And until next time, keep smiling.